Mode is short for blend mode. A layer is blended with the layers beneath it. Most of the blend modes are named after photographic or artistic techniques for manipulating colors that they try to emulate. For example, burn and dodge refer to techniques that are used in film-based, that is not digital, photographic printmaking, where some parts of the print are deliberately overexposed to make them darker, and others are underexposed to lighten them. For the most part, these are really artistic and photographic printmaking techniques that you can really only learn and understand by trying them out. They are usually not needed for technical illustrations, though. However, layer modes are an important part of Photoshop in general, so it is good to understand the basics of how blending works so that if you want to, you can at least try them out. So that's what we'll look at next. In terms of implementation, a blend mode is a formula or algorithm for combining the numeric representation of the color of a pixel on a layer with the numeric color representation of the pixels beneath it to produce a new color. Blending works from the bottom layers up. The second lowest layer is blended with the lowest layer to produce the color you see on the second lowest layer. Then the third layer is blended with the result of blending the second lowest and the lowest layer, and so on. The algorithm for normal mode is pretty simple. It mixes a color with the color below it, according to the settings of the opacity and fill of the layer. To see how this works, open the blendmode1.psd file in Photoshop. Wow, is that hard to look at. This is a greenest green rectangle on top of a reddest red rectangle. Both layers have 100% opacity and fill. Using the Info tool, we can see the RGB values for the greenest green rectangle are red 0, green 255, and blue 0. And for the reddest red, they are red 255, green 0, and blue 0. The normal blend mode makes the new color for the layer the sum of each of its RGB components times its opacity, and the lower layer's RGB components times 1 minus the upper layer's opacity. So if we make the greenest green layer's opacity 50%, the new color should be 255 times 50% plus 0 times 50% for the green component. Likewise, 0 times 50% plus 255 times 50% for the red component. Both layers have 0 for blue, so that ends up being 0. An interesting artifact here is that the hue of the new color is 60. That's halfway between red and green, and is the yellow hue. It doesn't look very yellow because its brightness is only 50. If we change the greenest green layer to 20% opacity, then the new color becomes 255 times 0.20, which is about 51 for the green component, and 255 times 0.80, which is about 204 for the red component. Using the Info tool shows us the result we expected. The hue for this new color is 15. That's not 20% of the difference between the red and green hues. The normal blend mode doesn't work that way, but it is a hue that is between red and green. So we can see that the normal mode of blending does a proportional mix of RGB components according to the opacity of the top layer. All blend modes work in this way, but they differ in the algorithms they use to calculate the new color. This example was done because it is a simple way to show how blending is implemented in Photoshop. Keep in mind, though, that picking colors by the numbers probably won't produce something that is aesthetically pleasing. However, if you are using the triad rule, as explained in the colors video, to make your palette of colors, there is a blend mode useful for technical drawings. Open blendmode2.psd in Photoshop. Each of the two rectangles represent a concept, and the drawing is meant to show that the concepts overlap each other in some way. However, as drawn, the blue concept seems to be given precedence over the green one because it covers it. One way to put the concepts visually on an equal footing is to use the Darkened blend mode for the rectangle on top, in this case the blue one. Darkened uses the smallest RGB component from each color, which gives the overlapped portion a merged appearance. This also works for a white or transparent background. For white, RG and B are all 255, so for the parts that don't overlap, the color is not changed because all of their RGB components are less than or equal to 255. So Photoshop blends layers, but the normal blend mode with 100% opacity just covers the layers beneath it. The Darkened blend mode is useful for drawings illustrating overlapping components, depending on the color palette you use for your drawings.